Good morning, friends. I am Patty Elhoff, the author of Upcycle with Decoupage, and today I'd like to show you what I think is a pretty simple way to take a real map and decoupage it over a tabletop so that it looks like this. And I took a regular rattan table, R-A-T-T-A-N, and something called spar varnish, which gave it its high gloss, but I wanted to use the spar varnish outside over this rattan table. I'm not going to paint it. Here's how the surface of it looked. I just washed it down, and from this point on I started to decoupage. You can use any varnish that you'd like though. If you're not working outside, you're going to want to put a drop cloth down or something to protect the floor because this will get a little bit messy. And you just want to unfold your map and fit it over your table so that the areas that you would like to show up are in the center spot. And obviously this map is larger than this table, so I'm able to cover the whole tabletop. Now I'll show this a couple of times, but what I'm doing here is I'm using a very fine mist. What is it about these maps? They're so hard to handle. I'm using a very fine mist, and you want to make this paper as pliable as possible. So you'll wet the paper with the mister on the front and the back and take a lint-free cloth to wipe away the excess moisture. But we want this paper to be very malleable. So once you've wiped off the excess water, you're going to take some decoupage glue. And it doesn't matter if it is matte or if it's the high gloss or satin. And you place the glue down, and you want to use a thin coat, but you want to make sure you have full coverage. Place the map back down, use your hands to just press out any wrinkles, and then you want to take a hard brayer. You want to be careful if you're using a credit card because I found that that can tear. If you go over a bump, that can really rip something. So you use the brayer. And what I'm doing is pushing out any excess glue, any air bubbles, and because I'm working in sections, I'm just going to follow those same steps. Spray the paper with a very fine mister, front and back, wipe away the excess, and then cover my section with decoupage glue. Lay the paper back down, press everything down. Make sure you get those edges, that's really important. And then take your brayer. Make sure you start from the center and work outwards with the brayer. That's the best way to use a brayer, just in the section you're working on. Follow these steps until you're all done with your surface. And if you'll notice with the brayer, I keep making sure I go over those ends. It's always crucial with decoupage that you get those ends down, the corners there, the rim of the table. That's what keeps everything together. So just go ahead and finish your whole surface, and then we're going to put this part of this aside to dry. Once it's dry, you want to take a coarse nail file, a sander is fine for this too, and go all around the edges and just remove the excess. Wipe away all of that excess paper that you just filed away and add a coat of decoupage glue now that this table is dry. You would want to use a sponge brush. Make sure you get these edges. I used a bristle brush here and it left lines when I was all done, so you would want to use a sponge brush for this. Once it dried, I did use a sponge brush to add the necessary second coat of decoupage glue to make sure everything was covered. And now I'm applying the spar varnish. Don't worry that it's coming out brown. It is an oil-based varnish, and I'll put a link below to a blog post about what spar varnish is. If you're going to use this outside, you definitely want to use the spar varnish. And here I'm using a sponge brush, and I'm going to cover the whole surface. This did take about 8 hours to dry before I added my second coat of spar varnish. I went horizontally the first time and vertically for the next coat and let it dry. And here's how our table looks when we're all done. I wanted a very high gloss on this. I'll show you pictures of it on the front porch in just a moment. But you may want to find maps from favorite places where you visited. I'll put some maps on my store. You don't want to use a poster for this because the posters are too thick. And just a little trivia before I let you go. On the left side of the water here on this map is the state of New Jersey, where I proudly call my home. I was born and raised here. As a matter of fact, Jack Nicholson, Meryl Streep, John Travolta, Joe Pesci, and Michael Douglas were all born here. And as far as musical talents, John Bon Jovi, born here, Bruce Springsteen, the boss, and Whitney Houston, as well as her cousin Dionne Warwick, were all born here. And probably the most famous person, the chairman of the board, Frank Sinatra, born here in New Jersey. On the right side of that water is New York, the very famous New York in Manhattan. So if you can find some places where you visited, it could be an ocean, a tropical place, wherever you like, you can find maps. You can send away for them. I'll put a few on my store. The link will be below. And in the meantime, guys, thank you so much for subscribing. Upcycle with Decoupage is on Facebook. If you go ahead and like and follow the page, you'll be notified every week when I put out a new video. So I will see you next week with another video. Thanks again, guys. Bye-bye.